Welcome to episode 18 of the DJ Force X podcast. On this particular episode, I am extremely happy to present Celldweller. I've been a big fan of his for a long time, and a lot of you who listen to my radio show will be familiar with some of his music because I play it quite often. My radio show, speaking of that, airs on Tuesdays at 11 p.m. UK time, 6 p.m. Eastern time, 3 p.m. Pacific on TotalRock.com, and on Saturdays at 11 p.m. on themix.fm. That's TheMixX.fm. Again, 11 o'clock Eastern time, 8 o'clock Pacific time, and it's about 4 in the morning for you UK listeners. But they're both available on the TuneIn radio app, so you can pick that up for your smartphone. It's a free app, and you can pick up some great radio stations on there, including the two I'm on. Not much has been happening. Just been getting on with Halloween, which was a good laugh with the kids, going trick-or-treating and everything. But yeah, let's get on with the interview. Like I said, this is Celldweller, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome everybody. I'm very excited to introduce my guest on this episode of the DJ Force X podcast. I have Klayton, also known as Celldweller. Welcome, sir.
I feel welcome. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. How are you today?
Good. Still alive.
Excellent. Cool. So, I first became aware of you. It's probably, I think, 6-7 years ago. You did a remix for the drum and bass outfit Pendulum.
Yes.
For Propane Nightmares, which was released via MySpace, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
it may have been. I can't even remember, but yeah.
So yeah, I've basically from then on, I've always been aware of what you're doing. I've downloaded your music and whatnot, purchased your music. So this is really cool for me because I've been a big fan for a long time. So
thank you.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
So the Celldweller sound, it covers a lot of the electronic genre, drum and bass, house, techno, etc. You also bring in huge soundscapes, some rock elements, along with orchestral sounds and things. When did you? What's the best way of doing this?
Why am I so schizophrenic? Is that the question?
Maybe. Why so many genres into one thing? I mean, it works. Don't get me wrong, it works.
Well, I know where you're kind of heading with this, and it's a simple answer for me. It's just simply it all makes sense in my brain. I don't actually analyze my music as I'm going to put a piece of orchestral music and then I'm going to put drum and bass, mix that with a big guitar riff, and then throw in a house breakdown or something. I'm a fan of music. I'm a fan of all kinds of music. I have been for many, my whole life. I grew up, music was the thing that touched me more than anything else. Yeah. So when it came time to actually create music, I started as a metalhead. I was a thrash kid listening to Slayer and, bands like Anthrax and Metallica and, whatever. Yeah. And so I was a drummer, and my sound was very much entrenched in that world. But I quickly grew bored of guitar, bass, and drums, and I'm like, "There's got to be more than this." And discovered electronic music. Discovered, I discovered the industrial scene at the time, which was burgeoning. It was Front 242 and Skinny Puppy and Frontline Assembly Ministry. Stuff that I was like, "Wow, awesome! Guys are creating music that is just as powerful as metal without really having a single guitar in it." And I'm like, this is great. So I started combining those worlds, and that really, that opened the door to my mind that I didn't have to just be a guitar, bass, and drum thing, So I started programming, and the beauty of that too was I could do it completely by myself. I didn't need to be in a band. I didn't have to, ask somebody's permission for, hey, is this riff cool? Can we put this in the song? And here I was, the drummer. You're the last guy that anybody cares about. You're the guy who just sit back there and shut up and play a beat. And I have always been more inclined to want to create. So, I'd be in these bands and the guitar players would go out to smoke a cigarette or get a beer or whatever they were going to do. And I would pick up their instrument without having any idea what I was doing. And I basically started to teach myself how to play guitar. Okay. And so I started learning how to play many instruments. And when I discovered a sequencer, I was like, I'm done with the band thing. I'm doing this by myself because I know I'm going to push myself harder than anybody's going to push me. And I get to do whatever I want. So I did. And, anything I listened to, anything that had influenced me stylistically, it never it never didn't make sense to me. I mean, I've heard for decades now people kind of being like, "Wow, how do you blend all these styles?" And it's like, I don't know. It's not weird to me. To me, this is completely normal. It was more me figuring out how do I blend all this stuff and not make it sound like a complete mess. Yeah. So, and unfortunately for me, I've put out albums that I look back on now and go, wow, that was a complete mess. And now the whole world has it, and they can listen to it. In fact, I bought my first 5 albums back only a few months ago. I finally bought them back, and I'll be re-releasing all my early Circle of Dust albums next year. So the origins of where I came from, people will actually get to hear that entirely remastered and everything else next year. But this has been years of me just taking what my influences are, whatever I'm influenced by at that moment, coupled with things that have influenced me since my childhood. And there's no reason and there's no way in my mind that they don't make sense together. It's a puzzle. And I just need to put it together so that it makes sense. And thankfully there are people who are cool with listening to my puzzles.
Nice. Yeah, no, it definitely does work. It's just, like I said, it's a lot of influences to bring in. So what are your main inspirations, if you have any?
Musically?
Yeah, musically. Yeah, sorry.
It's very hard for me to ever answer that question. It's like, what's your favorite movie or what's your favorite band? It's like, how do you pick one? It's just, it's stylistic. It's like, I remember as a kid, my grandfather had what he called a music room, and it was 3 out of the 4 walls were vinyl from floor to ceiling. And I would go there. He lived very close. I spent a lot of time there, and he'd sit me in the chair and throw headphones on my head and play. He'd play classical music. He'd play early disco, rock and progressive synthesizer music, and a little bit of everything, like a lot of the stuff he liked. So I ingested music at that age. And I remember as a kid, for the first time ever hearing Mr. Roboto by Styx. And there's this robot voice in the track, and it mesmerized me. I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I love it. And later in life, I would find out that was a vocoder. So, it's more about like those stylistic memories that I have. And then in my early teen years, it's like I was a full-fledged metalhead. And then from there moved on to like new wave. After new wave had already come and gone, I went back and was like, I love this sound. I just wasn't talented enough to make it. I don't know why it just didn't click with me, but I'd go back and listen to the Smiths and the Cure and Depeche Mode, and like that was all I listened to. I didn't listen to any more metal, and pretty much haven't really listened to much rock or metal since. There's no, I don't attribute, if Celldweller has a sound, I don't know what it is. It just comes out of me, and as far as I'm concerned, it's just who I am. And what you're hearing, if there's a sound you can identify, well, maybe somebody could tell me what it is, because I don't really know. I just do what I do, and when a song is done and I go, okay, this is cool, I'll release this, then that's done and I'm on to the next thing. So I don't know. I mean, I can't really attribute it to any specific band or any specific album. It is an amalgamation of, decades of ingesting music and basically just throwing it in the melting pot and spitting it back out, I guess.
Well, that's really cool. The bit you made, the comment about Mr. Roboto, kind of, I had the same sort of, it was another track, but it had the same kind of effect on me. It was the Herbie Hancock Rocket track.
Yeah, right.
And it was that scratch sound.
Yep.
And I was when I remember as a kid listening to it, and I was like, what's making that noise?
Right.
What's that? And I found out it was a guy, 2 turntables and a record. And I was like, that's what I want that. That's what I want to do.
It's like, it blows your mind. Like, I didn't even know this was possible,
Yeah, it's just the way I was so used to hearing guitar music. I was so used to hearing, all that comes with it. My dad was a guitarist, and that's where my sort of musical sort of seed was laid. But hearing that different sound over that, and it grabs you, and that's the bit. Yep. I mean, like with you, it got you into finding out what that noise was. It was a vocoder, and it spurred part of your inspiration.
Absolutely did. Yep.
Like I say, I was just sort of relating, and it's just the same effect happened to me with that particular track. So that's really cool. So yeah, listeners to my radio show, away from this show, like I said, I've got a radio show that plays out mainly sort of electro rock music.
Okay.
I play a lot of your stuff. Have done since even before my radio show. I used to DJ club nights in the UK, like rock nights, and I used to drop some of your tracks, remixes, mashups, things like that there.
Sweet, thank you.
So yeah, like I said, I've been a fan for a long time on that front. But yeah, like listeners to my show will be familiar hearing you tracks more recently tracks like Heart On and Elysium, which are from your new album, End of an Empire.
Yep.
Just before we get into the details about that, how many albums do you have now? How long have you been going?
I don't actually know. There's probably websites that can tell you how many albums I have, but I don't know. I mean, really, if as far as I know, I have 3 main vocal albums where I'm going, this is my artist statement, which are my debut self-titled album, Wish Upon a Black Star, and now End of an Empire. Mm-hmm. But I have a lot more content. I do a lot of instrumental stuff that is specifically written for like film, TV, and video games, and it's all over online and it's used by a lot of gamers, and we're seeing it cropping up in actually gaming tournaments and everything else. So I have lots of albums of that kind of stuff. I have an instrumental series called Transmissions, which are basically they're musical studies with a lot of my hardware, my modular synthesizers and a lot of analog gear. And it's really me just making things that I think sound cool. They're not really traditional Celldweller tracks. And I basically finish them top to bottom, almost all just analog, little processing in the box, and release them as transmissions. So I as far as albums and singles, I don't even know. But I mean, I'm sure that I have released hundreds of tracks under just Celldweller. That doesn't include the probably 150 that I did before that. Before probably more than that. It's probably a few hundred. I did a few albums with Chris Angel for years before we parted ways, and he went and did his thing in Las Vegas, and I formed Celldweller at that point. So I've made a lot of music in my career. I very rarely sit around and think about it. I'm always on to the next thing. So I can't remember exactly how much I've done, but it's a lot. It's a lot.
No, it kind of reminded me like some of that, because I looked at some of the releases you had like coming out. I didn't count them up. That's why I asked how many you had, but it kind of reminds me of Aphex Twin when he used to release a couple of albums, and he released like Analog Bubble Bath.
Right.
Volume 1, 2, 3, and things like that.
Yeah.
Just the way that you've released stuff. Like, I was also speaking to Brett Blue Starley a few weeks ago as well. And he has the same kind of release. I can't remember what they're called, though.
Anti-sleep.
That's it, anti-sleep. You know, those in-between just bits that process you just want to get out and have them out for people to use for various like media formats and things. So how did that come? Because you run your own label, right? You have FixT as yours.
Correct.
Yeah. So how did that come about? Why did you want to set up your own label? I mean, you seem to have a lot of, like you say, your music's used in a lot of like video game trailers, things like that. How did that come about?
Well, those are two different questions, but I'll start with the FixT. Right. FixT question as far as the label. Why did I want to start my own label? I didn't. I was just tired of getting bent over the couch on deals. I've signed so many bad record deals. It would take me 2 hours to tell you the stories of the bad deals that I signed. In fact, me buying my masters back that I was referring to, which Circle of Dust was my first project ever. Yeah. And I bought these masters back, and I signed a horrible deal, was trapped in a lawsuit when the label went belly up. They basically were like, you can't go anywhere else, but we can't afford to have you do any more albums. So I was deadlocked. I couldn't do anything. Yeah. The fact that I'm still alive and survived through that is a borderline miracle itself. So, bad deal after bad deal, getting screwed, not really knowing what I was doing. I finally got to a point where I started doing things myself. I started figuring out, how do I make merchandise myself? How do I record myself? I do all this kind of stuff. And over time, it started to make sense to me that, like, okay, I built all of these things to protect myself from signing bad deals, because I basically created my own infrastructure, and now I don't need anybody else. So that's when it started making sense. Like, I'm doing all this for me, and I built a small team around me. At that point, it was a very small team. I might have had one employee. James Rhodes was my first employee. He was probably the first, he was the first full-time employee I ever had. Yeah. And he worked free for like 2 or 3 years just because he was, he came to me. He wanted to do this. So really, the inception of FixT as a label was based around the fact that I was an artist, had signed a lot of terrible deals, and I knew some other artists that didn't know what to do with. They could create the music, but they didn't know what to do beyond that. Namely, my brother, who is very talented, very talented, wrote great stuff, but he could finish an album, but he didn't know what to do with it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm doing all this for me as Celldweller. Why don't I bring him on and put him through the same channels? I'm opening these doors for Celldweller. I can then just put him through the same channels.
Yeah.
And really, he didn't end up producing any more music beyond that at that point. But we started looking at, okay, let's start signing some other bands. And simultaneously, as artists started signing to the label, the company started growing, and expansion into like merchandising and public relations, doing PR directly. And there were many other things that have grown. And the flagship artist that came out of that was Blue Stahli. It was Brett. I mean, he was a kid who was working a full-time job. I almost accidentally heard a demo from somebody, and I said, "Who is this?" And that led to a series of like conversations where he was like, "I'd love to come out and be your assistant in the studio." And I was like, "I don't know. I don't need an assistant." But I finally reluctantly was like, "All right, come out. Let's talk." And then he ended up leaving his family and friends in Arizona and just heading to the Midwest, where he didn't know anybody, to be my assistant. And very quickly I realized this kid's too talented to be somebody's assistant. I'm going to teach him production, and I'm going to basically oversee what he does. And here we are 6 or 7 years later, and he's incredible. He's amazing. Yeah. So he's done some great things. So the paradigm for FixT was to have artists follow in my footsteps, in the sense that I've opened up these doors for myself. I've created I've created the protocol and the structure to support an artist career. And then the rest is up to you. You've got to make good art. You've got to make good music, and we can kind of get it distributed. And it was inadvertent. It wasn't like something I just said, I'm going to start a label and make a lot of money, because this isn't really about money. This is, for me, is about giving people fair deals, which I never got. So, we are, as far as a label goes, we've talked to some artists, and some of the deals they're signing really kind of like, I have to scrape my jaw off the floor to think that there are artists in today's day and age that are still signing deals as bad as those. Yeah. So we are very fair, and we're very selective, and we want to sign artists that are in the world that we know and feel like we can take that to the next level. And I mean, we're courting probably 6 to 8 artists right now. We're just kind of like seeing who's going to end up panning out as far as the style. And, you have many conversations, but to get one to completion, takes a while to get there. So yeah, we'll see how that works out. But the label is growing. And all in all, really by getting a lot of bad deals and being in a lot of situations that really would have sunk a lot of artists, including me. If I was smart, I would have quit, but I didn't. I was way too dumb. So I kept going, and then ended up creating a structure, basically a little cottage industry around me to support my own career. And then that ended up becoming FixT, which ends up now supporting the careers of other artists as well.
No, that's really cool, because I also spoke to one of your other artists as well, Richie Nix.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And he again, his album's really good. Really like that rock rap crossover and electronic crossover. Yeah. It's a really awesome sound. And to mention Blue Stahli, his new album as well, The Devil. It's a great album. Again, these artists that I've been playing regularly on my show, and it's great to hear that sound come out, because it wasn't as it was quite hard to find artists that had that sound, unless I went back and went for the sort of industrial side of things. Obviously in the UK we had bands like Pitch Shifter.
I was a big Pitch Shifter fan for sure. Yeah.
And a lot of the sort of like alternative dance, like the Prodigy, Chemical Brothers, things like that. Mm-hmm. We had those, but it wasn't like it wasn't a sound. I think it still is a sound that can really grow in the sort of mainstream area of the sort of alternative scene.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, by default, the technology is finally going to permeate so much of our culture, which it already has, that it's not going to be weird to hear these sounds mixed together. I mean, it just, for a long time, it was, like you said, it was completely niche. You had to dig to find. I couldn't find anybody else that was doing what I was doing. I didn't really care, because I was just doing what I wanted to do. I wasn't really trying to define a genre by any means. Mm-hmm. But, like you brought up Pendulum, and these guys, I was like listening to their first album, Bring Your Color. Mm-hmm. I was like, wow, this is a good drum and bass record. And then one day I get hit up randomly. Hey, we're fans. Like, would you be interested in doing a remix? And here's Pendulum hitting me up to do a remix. Yeah. So the first time I met Rob and Gareth in Detroit, the first words out of their mouth was like, I said, what's up? And Rob was like, hey, so are you Circle of Dust? And like, I didn't even know what to say, because I'm like, how would you even know what that is? which is my first project I was discussing, which I'll be re-releasing next year, all the albums. But he brings this up, and he's like, yeah, Gareth and I used to listen to you in high school, man. We loved that stuff. And I was amazed, but it's because there's not a lot of music like that. You've got to dig to find the few bands. Like Pitch Shifter was one of those bands that were mixing guitars and like electronics. And then Prong, I've worked with Tommy from Prong, and he was one of the guys that was trying to do that. Got to a point, and then he kind of went back to just doing straight up rock and roll. But, like there weren't many artists that were really pulling that off. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And I'll tell you for a fact that we are going to be directly involved in bringing that to the people that want it. I mean, we've already signed I Will Never Be the Same. We've got Voicians, Seamless, Richie, like you mentioned. And there's a few other things, a few other artists we are discussing right now as far as signing, which is really going to expand the sound of FixT and really put us on the map as far as like this label gets this sound, and if that's what you want, this is where to get it.
Awesome. That sounds good to me, because I'm always looking for new music, especially in that genre, because like I say, my radio show specializes in that, and like I'm now finding a lot of bands coming out now that have that sound with them, bands like Palisades, The Browning, Exotype, bands like that just fuse that electronic sound with like hardcore, sludge metal or whatever, and it is that real sort of marriage of sounds that I've always liked. It's always been something that has been close to me. I've even tried to make it at one point with my band. We kind of melded a few electronic bits here and there, but we end up just being sort of a bit more like metal than the electronic sound.
Yeah, it's not easy, and that's why I think a lot of people have shied away from it, because this is not, you don't not to insult the genre, but this is not EDM. You don't pull up a preset template, drop a few sounds in, and boom, you've got a track. It's not. Like I said, I never even viewed it that way. For me, I was just making music. In fact, I was making music that I really didn't think anybody cared about or listened to. I wasn't making it for anybody else. I was making it for me. It's kind of a challenge. So you find that as technology advances, things are getting a little easier, but there is still a little bit of a curve towards doing this. The thing is, you're just getting young producers getting in the game who are as dumb as I was when I started, and I mean that as a compliment. They're not. They're not looking at it going, oh, well, you're not supposed to mix these styles, or no, it's too difficult to mix these styles. They're just going, I like this sound and I like this sound. Let's just put them together. So they have that sense of oblivion that I had, where you just do it.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, and you may end up making some bad music. There's no question about it, but that doesn't stop you from trying and continuing, and you will absolutely learn and grow and develop your own sound.
Yeah. No, definitely. I'm looking forward to hearing more. So it's always good. Get to your new release, End of an Empire, which is out on
November 6th.
November 6th, that was it. It's out on November 6th. It's basically a combination. You were doing, you've done 4 releases prior to this, kind of EP style, where it was a couple of original tracks and remixes. Is that right? You had 4 chapters.
Yeah, the chapters are actually the songs from the album. So instead of making people wait 2 years or 3 years to finish an album, I finish 2 songs at a time and release them in that order. And then at the end of the process, I release them in chapters, and usually there's a lot of bonus content. My previous album, Wish Upon a Black Star, had a lot of different type of bonus content. This album, the bonus content was remixes. I went to some guys I liked and like, hey, you guys want to do some remixes and get their take on it?
Yeah.
And so really with a chapter, which is really based around 2 songs, you were still oftentimes getting over an hour of music. So what the final album is now is more songs that no one's ever heard, plus the 4 chapters, which are, if you get the deluxe version of the album, which is coming up, it's 5 CDs worth of content. You've got remixes, instrumentals. I've also done these things called factions, which are derivative versions of the original songs. They're not remixes. They're completely re-recorded versions. They're usually manipulated so much that you can't even really tell what the origin of the track is, but they're instrumental, and they're meant more to be like my instrumental stuff that's used for film and television. It's very cinematic sounding. And I went back to kind of like the noisy kind of industrial vibe on those things, specifically because this album revolves around a post-apocalyptic wasteland in the future. So sonically, I felt like that's kind of where this belonged. So there are really, although I'm talking about this being my new album, from me alone, you're really getting 2 full albums, because the Factions alone as a separate album are 15 tracks. They're 35 minutes worth of music just for Factions, let alone, over 60 minutes of music on the main album, plus the remixes and instrumentals and everything else.
That's really cool, because I noticed that looking at your store and with your other artists, you do release the instrumentals as a separate album, which is really cool, because
do you know why?
I don't know. I was about to ask why.
I'll tell you exactly why. Because early on, when I was broke and I released my first album, which was the self-titled Celldweller album, I had burned out a couple of copies of the instrumentals to go to like people in the film TV industry to use for trailers. And one day my manager at the time calls me and he's like, I just found a burned CD of the instrumentals on eBay that just sold for over $300. He's like, maybe we should just release these, because clearly people want them. Yeah. So I never really thought that anybody would care about instrumentals, but that started becoming, right from the beginning, part of the protocol. It's like, okay, we release the instrumentals because now more than ever, I think people love the lyrics, but there are definitely people who want to just like throw this on while they're gaming and they don't want the vocals kind of to distract them, or who knows what, maybe they want to do karaoke. It doesn't matter to me. I put a lot of effort into sound design and mixing, and a lot of times that gets covered up by vocals anyway. So I'm glad there are people who are hearing some of the hard work I'm doing that's kind of under the vocals that you don't get to hear otherwise. That's really cool. That's really cool. I didn't realize that was the reason. I thought it was purely for like the gaming, TV movie industry type thing, just so you have them out there. But I didn't realize because one went for like $300 that it wasn't the money. It was more about the demand. It was like, well, people want this, and if they want this, I don't have a problem with them having. In my opinion, I'll put it out, and if nobody buys it, nobody buys it. I don't care. Whatever. Yeah. So I'll put it out there, and if you want it, get it. If you don't. Yeah, because I remember the old days of when singles were released like properly. They used to slap the instrumental on there, and sometimes the a cappella as well. Right, especially on vinyl. I bought a lot of old CD singles that had that. Yeah. So no, that's really cool. So you briefly touched on the story behind End of an Empire, and you were talking about it just then. What is you said it was set in a post? Was it post-apocalyptic? Yeah, post-apocalyptic. So what's the if you don't mind, you can do it briefly, but the story behind it. Well, I actually will save the story because you can read it for yourself. There's a 40-page comic book that is going to be telling a more expanded story that comes out with End of an Empire. Okay. So this is all the artwork that you're seeing on the CDs. This is from my artist in Ukraine. She's amazing. And for months now, I've had her working on a comic book. The story is conceived. There are characters on every single chapter. So when you looked at the album art for each chapter as it was released over the last year, every chapter had imagery of a character, like some kind of alien or some kind of cyborg, a robotic kind of creature. And these now all collide in this story that's coming up, which will be available in a few weeks. Okay, cool. That sounds really cool. I do enjoy a good comic book, so yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that one. Great. So do you plan to tour this album, either as a sort of live band or DJ sort of tour with it? Well, it's no secret to anybody who has followed me for any length of time that I really hate touring passionately. I really like being in my studio and producing. So I always say that, I don't really, like, if I never had to tour again, I'd be a really happy guy. But by the same token, there's a lot of people who really want to see a Celldweller live show. So I'm in the middle of scoring a video game, which is Killer Instinct Season 3 from Microsoft right now. And I'm also about to kick in with a full score of a movie. I'm scoring a movie called The Dunes. So I'm going to be tied up on other projects until, probably mid next year. And at that point, I'm going to decide whether or not I'm going to put together a live show. And if I do, it's going to be a very limited run. I'm only going to probably tour for a block of maybe a few months, and wherever I get booked is where I'll play, and after that, I am done. Okay. So, again, I'm not making any promises, but that's probably the most positively I've talked about the possibility of touring in the last 5 years. So you get the exclusive on the possibility of a tour. Awesome. Everybody else has got a straight out no. Fair enough. Are there any artists you'd love to collaborate with that you haven't already? Because I know you do a lot of in-house collaborations with Brett. Things like that. Is there anyone out there that you'd love to work with? Yeah, I'm sure there's a list a half a mile long. You ask me right now, I'd be like, I am, who am I? Am I, who am I? Like I love her voice. Man, it's hard for me to pull that kind of like off the top of my head, because again, I spend so much time making music, I don't even have much time to listen to music. I've always wanted to collaborate with Robert Smith, knowing that would never happen. But I was such a huge Cure fan, and his voice is just like, I just love his voice. And I don't even know what that would end up being anyway. But there are of course dream collaborations. But a lot of times my collaborations that I end up actually doing just end up happening naturally. It's rare for me to kind of just reach out and be like, hey, I'd love to collab with you. Just kind of a natural thing that happens. And I don't do it very often either. Okay. So that's probably not a great answer, but
okay,
it's at least an answer.
Yeah, I was going to say the Cure are touring the US next year, so
that's what I saw. I mean, I love how Robert says, "This is it. We're never touring again," and then a year later they're back on the road. I'm like, yes. Great.
Yeah, I'm hoping they come down this way in Florida. So
yeah,
they've not announced a date this way yet. I know they've done LA and New York, but they're releasing the rest of the tour dates soon, I believe. So
great.
Hopefully, it'll be nice to see them.
Sure.
Didn't manage to see them in the UK when I used to live there. I know my sister did, but she's a bit older than me. But yeah,
I've seen them in New York. I mean, I grew up in New York, so I've been to Cure shows in New York. But since this is probably around Wish, or sometime after Disintegration, and then after really Disintegration, I kind of fell out of love with where they were heading musically. So
yeah,
but it's really, to me, it's more about the older stuff anyway.
Yes, yeah. No, I agree. So like you briefly touched on it, that you don't really have much time to listen to other music or artists. Is there anything you are listening to at the moment in particular that you can pull out, or
there's lots, and I'm actually updating a Spotify playlist that people can subscribe to every week. Like if you go to the official Celldweller Spotify page, assuming you can get to Spotify, I have a playlist there that I update every Friday. It's called Spotify Friday.
Okay.
And I put tracks in there that I'm listening to every single week. So I'm looking right now because I can't remember. Oh yeah. I'm trying to actually look at my own Spotify Friday playlist so I can tell you who, this week I put in a band called Daestro, Stegosaurus Rex, and Motorrat. So before that was Kill the Noise, Anthrax, and Phantogram.
Nice.
And then before that was Richard Devine, Fluke, and the Crystal Method. I usually do 3 to 4 tracks a week. So I have there's 171 songs in this playlist because I do it every week and I keep adding tracks. So if you're definitely interested in stuff that I like that has inspired me, like I really dig the new Refused album. I think that's really cool. Going back to bands that I used to listen to, like the New York hardcore scene, bands like the Crumbsuckers, and probably a lot of music that people have never heard of. I dig the new Health album. I think that's really cool. And, I do have a Pitch Shifter track in there, ironically, and, Men Without Hats, Sisters of Mercy, Goldie,
Goldie.
I
love Goldie.
I love Goldie as well. Yeah. So, there's stuff all the way from my roots all the way up to the stuff that I like now.
Awesome. No, I'll definitely check that out. So, you said Goldie. I love. Not many people, especially over here, have heard of him. I know he's sort of been in and out of films as well, but his music.
Yeah.
I grew up with that Underworld, the Chemical Brothers.
Oh man, big fan. I love Underworld. I love Chemical Brothers. Absolutely.
Yeah, just all that kind of that UK electronic like dance music. I still listen to it now, and that is memories.
That was my biggest influence when I got heavily into electronic music. It was really everything coming from the UK. It was drum and bass. It was trance and early psytrance, which wasn't 100% UK, but like definitely like European. Israel, there was a lot of psytrance coming out of Israel as well. Brazil, but man, a lot of my influences and a lot of the sound that I love, the people who I felt were taking the more musical risks were the people in the UK, the people in Europe, like that. I was like, okay, these people understand that you don't have to have these boundaries that, I've tried. I was on labels that they try to take me to American radio, and the labels would tell me, and the radio DJs would say, we'd love to play your music. We love it. But in order to get it on the airwaves, you need to basically copy like a Korn song or a Limp Bizkit song, right? Something that sounds kind of like them.
Yeah.
that'll get you on the radio. And I just kind of like laughed and picked up my stuff and walked out of their office. I no thanks. That's not who I am, and not who I'll ever be. So
yeah, no, because we had more of an outlet for the electronic sound over in the UK with Europe as well. Having a lot of DJs as well helps into that music, because it grew over there and like Spain, Ibiza, France, all that area was just like, it still is now like the place to go for dance music as a whole. I know the US is now catching up, which is nice. You got like Miami, which seems to be the sort of like electronic music hub for the US at the moment.
Yeah.
A lot of the new acts or new DJs that go through seem to come there. I've had a few come through Tampa here, which is kind of nice to see. But it is still, I think it's gonna take a little bit more to break the US. Korn almost did it with their dubstep crossover. And a lot of these bands that are now like melding the sounds, I feel they'll do well because they're getting a lot of attention. You've got bands coming from the UK like Enter Shikari.
Yeah, right.
And then we've got, like I said, we've got a couple of bands here that I've already mentioned. So yeah, I mean, hopefully now the radio stations will go, okay, we can now do this and actually hear stuff on the...
Well, the beauty is that radio is becoming less and less relevant. I mean, it's cool because they can reach people, but really, the generation that's coming up now, I see it with my own two eyes. They're finding their own content, and it's passed around word of mouth more than it is discovered on the radio. They're just kind of going, I like this band, check this out. Here's a link, boom, right to a YouTube channel, right to a YouTube track, whatever. So, you know, I feel like, you know, even for us and our sound right now, we're discovered more because it's word of mouth. People are hearing it in gaming collages and in other videos, or, you know, they're discovering the lyric video or the music video, and they're being passed around. And so I think radio as a paradigm is becoming less and less relevant. And so, you know, like where America's still content playing like Nickelback and Nirvana. I mean, haven't we been over that for like 20 freaking years? Isn't that long enough to play the same boring crap over and over and over and over and over? I mean, excuse me if I sound bitter, but...
No, it's all right. Go, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really apologizing. I'm just kind of... Because I really don't feel bad about it. I mean, I know I'm not the only one that feels this way. It's like, really? We're going to still play this same crap?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if it gets you sponsorships and it makes you money, then cool, but... There's a lot of people, and the numbers are absolutely growing, that really aren't content with that anymore. Where they're going to go find their own music other places, and that's going to become the new paradigm. That is going to be and you either grow with the way things are evolving, or you get left behind, like a lot of the record industry did.
Yeah.
When the advent of the MP3 and iTunes and the digital age, and you got these old crooners still kind of going, oh yeah, you know, the way it used to be, let's bring back the glory. It's like, cool, that makes you feel better. But nothing's going to change, bro. So sorry.
No, exactly that.
You're going to wake up one day and be completely broken without a job if you don't conform.
Yeah. Even with like exclusive track plays and stuff, I found that instantly, as soon as it's done, it's up online. It's like the clip of the radio show where you got the intro and outro from the whatever radio show it is. It's instantly on YouTube. So it's that kind of like, it's moved on from the mentality of recording a radio show, like with just a cassette tape or whatever,
correct,
and passing it around your friends. To go on that, I mean, like I said, I'm a radio DJ, but my show, it's available across all formats. So if someone wants to download it, they can download it. If they want to stream it, they can stream it, and it goes up.
That's smart.
As soon as it plays, it just goes up onto Mixcloud, Mixcrate, all that kind of stuff, and it's just purely because the stations I'm on are internet radio stations, so they're not like they're available purely by streaming.
Yep. And people will find that. They'll find, and then, you know, that's kind of how I found a lot of like the early psytrance stuff I loved, is I'd find these like online, I forgot what it was called. It was like an MP3, like it was basically like radio. That it was like radio. Anybody could create a radio station. I would just go tune in and live stream guys that were basically doing internet radio shows of this kind of music. And that's where I discovered a lot of the stuff that I loved was through that.
Yeah. So
radio, as a format, it's commercial radio that just won't conform. But like radio, like people bringing music to the masses, if it's what they like, they're going to find it for sure. And they're going to spread the word. It's just, you know, it's kind of like television. Look at what's going on with TV.
Yeah.
I mean, it's changing. It's becoming a la carte. You pick what you want versus a big cable company saying, this is what we think you should watch. People are going, well, you know what? I don't want to pay for that. I just want to pay for the stuff I want. So people will go find the content they actually want and are moved by.
Yes. Yeah. And until, like I'd say, until Cars I know cars are having Wi-Fi in them now, so it's getting there to have that content on demand for you. So as soon as that's like more viable, more, least expensive for people and things like that, like internet has become, then that will be the death of conventional radio as we know it, I feel. So, because like you said, people are picking their own content. You've got things like Apple Music, Spotify, a bunch of other sort of like on-demand services where you can, like you're doing with Spotify, you're creating your own playlist for people to listen to. Yeah. And people are going to go to that because if they're a fan of you, they're going to go to those sites and they're going to listen to that music. Yeah. And that's a way of spreading new and potentially old music for new ears. And that's how the kids are going to find out, because they're not going to try and tune in a radio to find out, Well,
they're only going to hear the same 5 songs over and over and over and over. It's Miley Cyrus and whatever, Taylor Swift or whatever her name is. Yeah. So like, I mean, who cares? I mean, it's like that will work, I'm sure, for a while, but yeah, I think this has been the new way. This is where things are heading, where people are just they're gonna find the content they want, and thank God it levels the playing field, because then it puts bands and musicians like me on the same level, the same playing field as an artist that's getting millions of dollars from their record label in promotion and tour support and everything else, which we don't have. You know what I mean? So, and however it pans out. But I mean, the people are going to decide. Yeah. The big wigs aren't going to decide for the masses. The masses are going to decide for the small collective.
Yeah. And I'm hoping new bands realize what you just said as well, that this is putting them on a level playing field with those other artists that are making, their money from it. But it's giving them that chance, whereas a lot of people we're in that transition phase where, they lament the fact that people are downloading stuff, for free or not, and people who lament the audio quality of an MP3, but at the same time, if a band realizes that the fact they're on the same playing field as whatever, say Metallica release next, Taylor Swift release next, whatever genre they are, that they do have that chance still. There may not be that instant, getting a record label the old style way, right? But if like yourselves, you monetize your content. So if you are in it as a business, or to make money, make a future for it, then you've got to educate yourselves in the way of monetizing. Say YouTube, it's relatively straightforward. Yep. You just turn the account on to monetize, and then every stream you get, it's a fraction of a penny, but it's better.
It adds up, and it's a little from here and a little from there. But this is that's the new way. I mean, this is really how FixT was built. The whole label was built on that idea. It's like stream from here, stream. I mean, the income does not come from one place like it used to. It's an amalgamation of many different places, including YouTube, including Spotify, including Apple Music. It's all of that, plus merchandise, plus touring, whatever it is. It all adds up. Film and TV licensing, video game licensing. It's all of that stuff added up, and that's how the ultimate objective here is to be an artist. Like, do what you want to do and make a living, and that's really, Brett Blue Stolly is the shining flagship example of that, where he was working a day job, but he really wanted to make music. And I was like, this kid is talented. And I basically took him out to lunch one day while he was here trying to do his thing, and then hustling coffee to make enough money to pay his bills. And I took him out to lunch, and I said, you are quitting your job. I'm going to start advancing you money so that you can just do nothing but write music until you can make enough money on your own that you're flying on your own. And that's exactly how it happened. And, he'll tell you that it probably brought him to almost tears, because it was like the idea. There's a lot of people out there that have a dream to do this, but the idea of how to pull it off, and the idea that they can actually do this full time and this be their living is really foreign. It's very difficult to make money making music. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of people. Like, great, so we have the internet. You can release a track tomorrow. Just make it tonight and that's out tomorrow. But if nobody knows who you are, not one person's going to download it. So that's only half the battle, is getting the music out there. It's then promotion and everything else. So, the idea that you can turn your dream of making music full time and being an artist full time into a reality is, it's definitely work, and you have to use all the tools available to you, including Spotify and YouTube and Apple Music and everything else. I mean, that's just part of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's all avenues of exposure. So
Yep.
You have to embrace it, otherwise you'll get left behind. I feel for a lot of them, you'll be just catching up for the rest of the time. If you look at some, obviously the YouTube like video makers, they're always releasing content. If you're regular with your content, the more people that are gonna tune in.
Yeah, sure.
So like yourself, you released your End of an Empire, in 4 chapters as you were finishing them. And it keeps that content running. It was every 2-3 months.
Every 3 months on the
3 months.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and you kept it regular. Now you've got the full album out, and that's the fruition of all that work.
Correct.
And then you just keep going after that. You let the promotion run for this for a bit, and then you go for the next one. Like you said, you've got a movie score coming out. You're doing Killer Instinct 3 as well, which I love that game. So it's a good game. So you just got to keep going. People have got I know studio time for a lot of people is still costing them, but just educate yourself on some of the recording processes. There's plenty of free audio recording services. May not be great, but they're a great place to start.
Yeah.
And then you go from there. It's just that education while you can.
And there's YouTube. I mean, you can. When I learned production or learned how I could even produce, I didn't have much gear at all. I had a 4-track and a sampler, and a Mac Classic, which had 2 megabytes of RAM or 1 megabyte of RAM and a 40 megabyte hard drive. I mean, that was the technology back then, so it doesn't matter. But I didn't have much gear, and I did not have YouTube. In fact, I didn't even have the internet. That didn't exist. So not to the masses, it didn't. So there was no way for me to watch a tutorial on how to compress a kick drum. I didn't even know what a compressor was. My first 3 albums, I didn't even know what a compressor was. I got my vocals loud enough in the mix and to stay there by distorting them. That's the only way I knew how to get them loud and proud and stay in the mix. So, if you're listening and you are a young producer or even an experienced producer, but you want to take it to the next level, I mean, you've got tutorials out the wazoo. And if you want something badly enough, you will spend the time to ingest that information and then try to apply it. Go get a program and try producing. I mean, the only way you're going to get better is by making bad things and making a mistake and improving on them. And you will over time. There's no question.
And there's plenty of forums and things still out there that people will help you. You put the track up and they'll say, well, this needs this, this needs this, and you go away. Do it. Yep. And that's partly how I did it. I learned a bit in college, some very old music technology with, it was back in the age of the Atari Falcon. So it's very primitive, like recording wise, digitally. And I've kind of progressed from there. I now have my, MacBook Pro, which we're using at the moment, Ableton, Logic, all that kind of stuff. And, I've learned as I went along, as these things evolved, I just, picked up from where before. And I've taken a bit of a break from making music for now, just sort of concentrating on other things. I DJ my radio show because it keeps me sane, if you will.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because it's a live mix every week. I do it like an hour long mix of like proper club mix kind of thing of all these tracks, and that just kind of keeps me leveled at the moment because I was in a band for 10 years or so in the UK. And we toured UK, Europe, all that kind of stuff, released like 3 albums and all that thing. Mm-hmm. So I was used to that life of creating, touring. And then we kind of slowed down. I was still DJing in the UK. I had like residencies and stuff. But then I moved here and that kind of stopped.
Yeah, it's like it takes work, man. It's like you have to either keep doing it or it just goes away.
Yeah, but I had to establish myself here like work-wise and things. So I was bringing in an income, looking after my kids. All kinds of stuff, but I'm going to get back to it. I think probably early next year.
Cool.
Just sort of get back into making music rather than just sort of listening and, the DJ side of things.
Sure.
Because I've got that kind of itch for it again, which is nice because it kind of went away. So, I'm going to try and do that. So,
right.
Cool. So, I've seen pictures of your studio. I always tend to ask most artists this. And your studio looks huge, so I'm just going to ask you what your favourite piece of gear is in there, rather than what you actually have, because you look like you have quite a lot. So what's your favourite piece of gear that you use to create music?
That is another question, like what's your favourite song, what's your favourite movie?
Okay.
There's so many, everything does something different, so it's so difficult to say. It really depends on what I'm doing that will dictate like what it's hard for me to say. I mean, there's so many cool things. I will say this, that if you dig up which would be very easy to do, dig up pictures or video of my studio, just search Celldweller Studio and you'll find it. I have a lot of analog and modular synthesizers, and End of an Empire in general, as a general rule, I went into this and said, I'm going to shy away from soft synths and I'm going to use hardware. I'm going to use hardware synths. So probably 75% of the sound design on the album that's synthesizer or electronic in nature has been, and a lot of the organic stuff as well, has been processed through all of this analog gear. So this was the first album I can say definitively that was made completely differently, in the sense that I was processing everything through analog means. So, Down to Earth, which is one of the songs on the album that's out, or will be out November 6th. It was already out on the chapters. Like, the whole intro is this fuzzy kind of bass thing, and that's exactly what it is. It's a live bass run through my modular rig in real time. And there's elements of that like that all over the record, where some of it is synthetic things that sound a little more organic after they're done being processed, and things that start organic and end up sounding synthetic by the time they're done. And that's something I've always done in my career, and I've always loved, is having people ask me, was that a real instrument or is that a synth? And it's like, I don't know. What does it sound like? It doesn't matter. Is it cool? Hopefully it's cool. That's really all that matters.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's hard to say what a favorite piece of gear is, but I definitely would say for the making of End of an Empire specifically, the analog synths, my modular synths, that was the biggest change in the process of making the album.
Nice. Yeah, it's definitely got a different sound to it. Sounds a lot, what's the word, like fuller in the sounds. Just that, because that analog, I always find that analog over the digital, I can usually tell just by the way it feels.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a definite change in some of the sounds that I've heard. So that's really cool to know that it was an analog, predominantly an analog album, which is really cool.
It absolutely was.
Cool. So, okay, finally, what are your hobbies away from music? What do you do to unwind? What do you do to get away from the noises in the studio?
I kind of never do, and that's the thing about loving what you do for a living, is I'm not even working a job. I don't even look at what I do as a job because I love what I do. But I do have to take a break once in a while to sleep, which I don't do much of, but I try. But watching movies, which really a lot of times is just an extension of what I do, because I'm generally analyzing the score, or I'm listening to the sound design, or I'm thinking about script ideas, or kind of story ideas. But I'll do that every once in a while, kind of take a break. I'd love to say that I go mountain climbing and paragliding, but I really just don't take much time at all. I mean, I will easily go a week without really venturing out of the studio. Like, I barely leave this room, because this is where I love to be the most. So, I don't really take a lot of times. I don't take deliberate vacations, haven't in many, many years. Unless I was conned into taking one, it was never really. I'm not the guy that goes, once a year I'm going to stop and take a week off and go hang out on a beach. That's just totally not me. I would just stay here and create. So I don't have many other hobbies outside of. If I look at doing something outside of music, it's just pulling up a patch on my modular synth that I don't have to do. Like, I'm not making it for any reason. I'm just doing it because it's fun.
Yeah.
I'll generally do that in lieu of watching a TV show or something, where people wind down and, sit on the couch and watch a TV show. I'll wind down by throwing a patch up and just making a cool sound. And sometimes I'll record them, and other times I'll just go, and I'll just shut the lights off and leave.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. It's okay. A pretty boring life, really, when you think about, if you compare your life to people going on great adventures and seeing the world. It's like, I am very content being right here creating. And I would guess most of my fans are, because the more I can give them, probably the more happy they are. So
yeah, you never know. I mean, those people that go out adventuring could be listening to you while they're doing it. So
that's very. I'd love to be the soundtrack for their adventure.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really cool. I mean, I know a lot of musicians that are like that. So, it's quite a say a normal thing for a lot of people who are passionate about doing something like this. And like you say, you don't see it as a job. You just enjoying what you're doing, which is what it should be. In life, that's what work should be. It should be something you're passionate about, something that you believe and enjoy doing.
Yep.
So
I can't help it, man. This is what I was built to do. So that's what I'm doing.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Klayton. It's been great. Good luck with the new album.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time as well, because I know I'm taking away from your studio time right now. So
that's all right.
But yeah,
Thanks
good
for
luck
getting the word out there.
Sorry?
Thanks for getting the word out there.
Yeah, no problem at all. You keep making that music, I'll keep playing it. So
sounds great, man.
So yeah, check out celldweller.com. Is that a good place for everyone to go?
Sure.
Just to check out, you got all your social media links there and everything.
Yes.
Sound links, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, cool. Well, thank you again, Klayton, and you have a good rest of your day.
Yep, you too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, man.
See you.
Bye-bye. And there we have it. We are at the end of another podcast. I'll have a couple coming up soon, just lining up some interviews, so there might be a couple of weeks in between, but I hope you don't mind. But thank you to all my new followers, new subscribers, and new listeners. We hit a record high over the past couple of podcasts, and it's looking good. I could do with a few more reviews and some rating, if any of you are still listening at this point. Just, they haven't switched off yet since after hearing the interview and this post bit here. But yeah, if you can go onto iTunes, search the DJ Force X podcast, leave us a review, 1 star, 5 stars, a couple of words as well of encouragement or constructive whatever you want, criticism, if you will. But yeah, no, I just rate and review, good, bad, ugly, I don't care. I just want to see that people are listening. It's a good way of proving that people are listening, apart from the statistics I get. Because I said there's quite a few of you, so hopefully we can get some of you to just type in a couple of kind words, hit the stars. You can do the same on Stitcher as well, because that helps out any Android users, or indicate any Android users my end, because iTunes is generally iOS. So you can get it on your PC, you can get it on your laptops, but when it comes to the phones, when people are out and about, it's usually just the iPhone on that front. But yeah, if you can just hit up reviews, that would be awesome. I'd really appreciate it, and I'm going to keep an eye on it, and I might even give you a shout out. Good, bad. I might even read them out to you. Give you a little bit of a response on there. But yeah, anyway, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to check out my radio shows on Tuesdays and Saturdays. I also have them uploaded to Mixcloud. That's mixcloud.com/DJ Force X. If you go to my social media feeds, I'm on Twitter at DJ Force X. I'm on Facebook /DJ Force X. It's a pretty unique name on that front, so most of my social media and web presence is pretty obvious. So yeah, check it out. DJForceX.com has links to everything. That's just about to get updated as well, because I've got some fantastic new artwork from Stu Phillips, who I will be having on the show soon, and his artistic page, the Kikoa. He did me some artwork for my radio show, so go check it out. Hit him up with a like on Facebook as well. That would be fantastic. But I'll be having him on the show soon just to discuss, artwork, because he does a lot of drawing events in the UK. He's also going into the convention scene as well, which would be fantastic. But I've also got a couple of bands coming up as well. I won't name names just yet because they're not 100% in the can. But we'll get them done. I hope you enjoyed Celldweller. I hope you enjoyed the past couple of ones. I know I did. It's been a really good run of shows recently, so just getting into the regularity of it, and hopefully keep going. But I need your support. I'm not going to be looking to sell anything. It may get monetized at some point, but I don't want to push it down your throat. But all I want at the moment is just to get recognition for these artists that I'm featuring, because I'm going to be featuring artists that very few people have heard of, to ones that hundreds of thousands of people have heard of. If not millions in some case. I'm aiming for that kind of area of the world. But I want to help these bands out any little way I can. I've been in their position. I've been in that area of people wanting people to support us. I want to do the same with this, and I want to give the bands the exposure they deserve. They go through it. They do a lot of work into the art they create and perform. And I want that to get recognised. And with a lot of these artists, it's being recognised. But I just want to get them that little bit further, give them that little helping hand, just to help them out. Because like I said, it's going to be some weeks, it's going to be bands that a lot of people know. Other weeks, it's going to be new bands or bands that, not a lot of people outside their sort of like area, their local area, if you will, know about them. But given that exposure of someone from, I've got listeners obviously in the UK because that's where I'm from. I know some people, my friends are there listening and everything. I've got new friends here that are listening as well in the US. And, if they tell friends about it, they pass on, the band names. That's awesome. That's what I want. That's what I want to happen. I want to support these artists in what they do. And if you know anyone listening want to come on this show, drop me an email, info@djforcex.com. Easy as that. Drop me an email, say you're interested, and we can sort out a time. I've got a schedule open with various times and dates, and we can do it via Skype. Like most of these are all done via Skype. If you're local to me, we can try and sort out some kind of face-to-face. But yeah, just drop me an email. Let me know what you do, what you do, to put it easy enough. And we'll be in touch and we'll sort something out. But yeah, I've got a couple of bands coming up, some new bands, some bands have been around for a while. And I've got some artists as well, and I'm looking to get some, just performers, stand-up comedians, people who used to work in the industry, just to get their perspective on how things are going and where they see things and what they're doing now and just things like that. Just trying to get that, get that exposure to them if they want it, or just have an interesting conversation where maybe someone listening could learn, a little bit more about the industry, or even, not just the music industry, but the gaming industry, the performing arts and things like that. Because I've got plenty of background in various roles from performing in a band to acting to setting up a stage show to the lighting, the sound, all that kind of stuff. My background is I've been on TV. As a kid, I was on some of the biggest TV shows in England, and I've been in like films, extras in films and things like that. So I have that experience and I have that exposure to that area of the world where I want to pass on. If I can be helpful to anyone, give advice to anyone, just getting people to talk. I love people that talk. If they want to talk, like Celldweller, just, he drove that conversation. I had questions, I had ideas about how I wanted it to go, and it went beyond that. Same with Brett Blue Starley, same with Black Lodge, and Rich Ward as well, just to name a few that I've interviewed. Those interviews I had like just bullet points, and it just went off in a totally different direction. I brought it back in occasionally to my sort of track to get the bits of the points of view that I wanted, the bits that I thought might help. But I just want people who can talk, who love to talk. And I know I've been rambling on, and I'm going to let you go now with one other thing. Go to djforcex.com. Click on the links. Go listen to my radio shows. There's over 100 of them on Mixcloud. Download previous episodes of the podcast. There's now, what are we on? Episode 18 now. So there's 17 others, including like Andrew WK, the guys from Seething Akira, Cypher 16, who've just released a new album. Amazing artists, working hard, producing fantastic sounds the way they do. And I just want to give them exposure. So go back, listen to a few. Listen to them all. Some of them aren't as long as that. Some are 20 minutes long. Some are like an hour and 20 minutes long. So, stick them in your phone when you go out on a road trip. It breaks up the music. Just have someone chatting for a little while. Stuff like that. Anyway, I told you I was going to let you go. So I'm just rambling now. And I'm going to let you go. So, till next time, this is DJ Force X out.